While the 90s does not have the number of iconic entries as the 80s, it's easy to forget just how good horror fans had it in the 90s. This is the decade that brought us hits like Scream, Silence of the Lambs, Audition, Blade, and The Sixth Sense. With those type of amazing films, it's easy to overlook some movies that are just as good and possibly even better. For this video, we will be diving into the best obscure, underappreciated, and hidden gems in the world of 1990s horror. Be sure to let us know what you think of the picks of this list, and don't forget to share your favorite overlooked 90s horror movies in the comments below. Enough of this intro, now let's dive into our top 6 picks. Number 6, Man Bites Dog, 1992. Remember in the 2000s when Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon came out and became an indie horror hit? That film was hailed as an original take on the slasher genre, and while it's a fun romp, you cannot deny how inspired it feels by Man Bites Dog. This 1992 Belgian film is deliciously twisted and feels way ahead of its time. The tone and style of this film would be something almost commonplace in recent years, but nothing else has really hit this hard. In Man Bites Dog, we follow a film crew as they follow a deranged serial killer named Ben. We slowly see Ben and the filmmakers lose it, getting into increasingly violent situations. At first, the film's dark comedy stylings make the uncomfortable scenes a bit easier to watch, but soon it becomes hard to ignore how bleak this movie gets. Every kill becomes more graphic and more personal, and the effects of Ben's mayhem seeps into every character we meet. While it won the International Critics Prize at the Cannes in '92, the NC-17 rating in the States kept us from hitting anything more than a cult status. Number 5, Night of the Living Dead, 1990. You may see this entry and go, is Night of the Living Dead underrated? You may even be more confused to see that this is a remake, but the 1990 remake of this iconic George A. Romero film honestly holds up. Tom Savini, a longtime friend of Romero, steps into the director's chair and offers up a fun update to the original film, but he doesn't change too much. What he does add is over-the-top gore and changes the Barbara character in a much-needed way. Savini also gives us a pre-Candyman Tony Todd, who delivers yet another brilliant performance. The film saw a critical reevaluation in recent years, but viewers at the time weren't feeling how similar it was to the original. We now praise this film for sticking true to what made the original so unique, but updating things in just the right way. The original Night of the Living Dead effectively handled the conversation of race in a really good way, and the remake does not lose sight of that. Savini is not known for directing features, but if the legendary makeup artist would like to helm another project, I think horror fans would be safe given what we saw in this film. Number 4, Cure, 1997. When the great Bong Joon-ho cites this as one of his favorite movies, you know this is a must-see entry. Even without that high praise, Cure stands on its own as one of the best Japanese horror films of all time. The way director Kiyoshi Kurosawa effectively blends serial killer thrillers with a slasher and shock elements feels so impactful. We'd see this style of film in things like Seven, Saw, and even the recent Batman film, but the way this 1997 film is so crucial, it's mind-blowing. In Cure, we follow a detective as he ventures through a case that changes his life forever. The twists and turns in this make this such a delightful viewing on multiple occasions. You really need to make sure you pick up on every little detail a second or even third time around. It doesn't have the claim to fame as its peers like Ringu and Audition, but it doesn't mean that it's any less stellar than those. Honestly, the impact that this film has had on the genre can make this one of the most influential movies on this list. Kurosawa's work in this film makes the rest of his filmography something any film lover must try. Number 3, The Addiction, 1995. Christopher Walken, black and white, vampires. Those three things should get you to watch this movie, let alone when I mention how great it turns out to be. The Addiction is a vampire film that comes in a decade filled with them, but it still stands out as one of the most artful and enticing. Even with the controversy at the time, people were really happy to see that this film had a different take on being a vampire, using addiction as a refreshing way to spin the narrative. This is different than its peers trying to do old school romantic vampires or action-filled insanity. While the supporting role of Christopher Walken is brilliant, Lily Taylor is what makes this such a compelling watch. We fall for her character more as we see her give in to her bloodlust. She's complex and way more well-rounded than many females in vampire films at this time. Her philosophy student turned bloodsucker also gives the film a way to kind of do a satire on academia and the pretentious attitude of this time period. Basically, this film uses every metaphor possible and makes sure you see vampires in a chic new light. Number 2. Crash, 1996. David Cronenberg dominated the 70s and 80s with his bizarre body horror films. Videodrome and The Fly are fan favorites and staples in the genre, but not enough people know about 1996's Crash and just how twisted it could get. While not straight up horror as the other entries on this list, there's no denying how dark this feels and how it fits perfectly next to Cronenberg's other works. Crash is one of the 90s most messed up movies, and that's from the same year as things like Audition and Seven, so you know it means something. We follow a film producer in this movie who follows a twisted group of people who are aroused by car crashes. As anyone knows about kinks, these people start seeking crashes in a more twisted way than you would ever expect. You can't take your eyes off this movie like a literal car crash. Cronenberg can step away from making straight up horror movies as much as he wants, but he never stops shocking you with each and every film. Also, if you think you know just how weird James Spader could get, wait till you see this movie. Number 1. Dead Alive, 1993. Peter Jackson was once one of the grossest film directors of all time, and I'm not even kidding. With bad taste in our number 1 entry, Dead Alive, he earned that label before retiring it to make the Lord of the Rings movies. The work Jackson did in this gory masterpiece makes things like the Evil Dead movie feel tame in comparison. This is one of those movies that you just have to see once and you will never forget it. Look up just a single image from this movie and tell me this doesn't look like one of the weirdest and wildest things you've ever seen. Everything about Dead Alive is gross out gore, but the cartoonish tone makes it way easier to digest. Evil Dead 2 has a similar style, but the amount of gore in that entire movie could probably fill up a portion of the iconic lawnmower scene in this movie. Given all that, much like Crash and Cure from this list, Brain Dead or Dead Alive, whatever you want to call it, is an essential part of horror. Even if you've never seen this movie, you've seen the influences of it. What did you think of this list? What is your favorite overlooked or underrated 90s horror movie? Is it on this list? Let us know what your favorite is down in the comments below. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe to Flickering Myth because we make videos like this every single week. Alright everyone, let's talk about overlooked 90s horror movies in the comments below.